When we're dealing with these, it's kind of an interesting concept as well. Tenancy in common, you have to remember that you are never, ever, 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 ever going to have a right of survivorship in tenancy in common. So if we say ownership in severalty, that means a single owner or a single entity owner. And then if we talk about anything else, we call that concurrent ownership, right? Where there's multiple owners in tandem. Tenancy in common never has right of survivorship, does not have to be equal shares, and can be for anybody. Every single one of us in here could purchase a property right now together as tenants in common. So we could have like 10 tenants in common, and every single one of us could will our share to our kids. Tenancy in common does not have right of survivorship. So you can sell your share, you can will your share, no problem. Not to be confused with joint tenancy. Joint tenancy has an automatic right of survivorship in other states. In North Carolina, we don't say it has an automatic right of survivorship. We have to use specific verbiage that says with right of survivorship, which at the end of the day, why on God's green earth would we use joint tenancy if we were not intending to create with right of survivorship? Why wouldn't we just use tenancy in common? In North Carolina, we use specific verbiage on the deed that says with right of survivorship. Can be for anybody. You can be brother and sister doing joint tenancy. You can be best friends doing joint tenancy. You can be siblings. You can do whatever. It does not matter. There's no rules to who can do joint tenancy. But understand, if you have joint tenancy with right of survivorship, you cannot will your ownership. If you die, your share automatically gets absorbed by the other joint tenants. So you will get questions that say Brandy and Cam own a property at the beach as joint tenants with right of survivorship. Cam passes away, and in his will, he wishes for, his 50% ownership of the beach house to go to his oldest child. Which of the following is true about the ownership? And the answer is going to be Brandy owns it in severalty now, 100%, because there's right of survivorship. So she absorbs his share. Do remember that you can sell your share. While everybody's alive, could you share your joint tenancy? Of course you could. But joint tenancy can only exist with what we call unity of time, title, possession, and interest. In other words, you took title at the same time. So if Brandy and Cam own this while they're alive, and Brandy sells her share to me, I would come in as a tenant in common because I'm taking title at a separate time than Cam did. Now, understand, if that happens, now it would just be 50-50 tenants in common. You cannot have one joint tenant. The second you get down to one person of the joint tenant list, they just convert to a tenant in common. You have to have at least 2 joint tenants for joint tenancy to still be alive. If there's 3 people, you can have 3 joint tenants. You sure can. And one of them sells their share. That means that you would have a 33.3% tenant in common and then 2 joint tenants. If one of the joint tenants dies, the other joint tenant still absorbs their share, but the tenant in common would not be affected by that. A lot of different ways that they could spin this. And then the last one is tenancy by the entirety. Remember, tenancy by the entirety is for married couples only. This is all national concepts, folks. These things exist nationally, right? Joint tenancy, tenancy in common, tenancy by the entirety. So when this says favored in North Carolina, all it means is if you are married at the time that you buy property, it will default to tenancy by the entirety. If you don't say a word to the attorney about how you want to take title, this is what they're going to do for you. The reason why you have to understand is it will default to this is because it will only default to this if you're married. If you're married, you do not have to take title this way. In theory, you could take title any way that you want to as a married couple if you stipulate it. But if you don't say anything, this is what you'll default to. Automatic right of survivorship, automatically equal shares. Both parties would always have to sign the deed to convey, which in North Carolina, that's true. Even if you have a marital interest, you would have to sign away your ownership. The way you terminate this, death, divorce, mutual agreement. So yet again, you will see questions. Husband and wife own a property as tenancy by the entirety. Husband passes away and on his will, he wants to leave the house to his kids, which the following is true. The wife owns it in severalty. This cannot be willed. If the husband passed away, his will would be ignored and the wife would own it in severalty. Then if the wife passes away and her will says to leave it to the kids, now the whole thing is going to the kids. Husband and wife could own 4 properties, all as tenancy by the entirety, and they would all hold true. The husband dies and the husband and wife have 4 houses to tenancy by the entirety. The wife now owns 4 houses in severalty, and then her will would proceed. From a real world point of view, folks, you got to be thinking about trick questions. And then for your clients, if you were to get remarried later in life and buy property as tenancy by the entirety, your remarried spouse has kids and you have kids and you don't set things up right. If you die first, your new spouse can leave that house to their kids and leave your kids nothing. North Carolina license on commission rule says you cannot practice law. You are not an attorney. So we would never give advice on how to take title. If you have a question that suggests that, why do we need to know this? And the answer choice is to give advice to our clients on how to take title. No, never, ever, ever. You are not an attorney. You would refer them to an attorney. The reason we need to know this is to know what type of deed and ownership somebody has and to suggest to our clients to talk to an attorney. We don't give advice on this. Let's say that you own a house by yourself today, and then you get married, that your spouse is now said to have a marital interest. Because remember what marriage vows say, right? What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. So they would have a marital interest. So in North Carolina, we're a 1 to buy, 2 to sell state. You would still need their signature to convey clear title, but they're not an equal owner for all intents and purposes. So the other thing we refer to is what we call a marital life estate. You own a house in severalty, you get married, they have a marital interest, and you die. Your will states that you want everything to go to your kids. Well, you're not allowed to disinherit your spouse. So what we would give them is what we call an elective share. We typically use what's called a length of marriage approach. They're going to say, well, how long were they married? A year? Well, then we'll say that the kid should give them a 10% stake in the house. So if they sell it, your husband would get 10% or something like that. So we call it marital life estate. You cannot disinherit your spouse.
If you like this video, feel free to share it with a friend. For more real estate education content, please subscribe to the channel. From all of us at Seacoast Real Estate Academy, thank you for watching.